presentation is being recorded for the purpose of televising on public access. Here at the Swansea COA, we offer various activities and services that are presented by volunteers or nominally paid practitioners. Participants do so with the understanding that the town of Swansea, its COA, and employees do not assume any legal or other responsibility for the advice or the services rendered. The Swansea COA is pleased to welcome and introduce Eleanor Baker with AAA. The timing of this event could not be more perfect, in my opinion. If anyone has had the opportunity to look out a window, you'll see that we've been blanketed with a lot of snow, a lot of ice. When it freezes over, these cold temperatures freeze everything over, and it leaves us with some pretty nasty traveling conditions, not only walking, but even when we're driving around. Those of you who use our bus service, we keep getting phone calls saying, is the bus running late? That's the reason why. So she's here today to give us a little bit of information about how we can all be a little safer, drive a little safer, some little tips. And I know I, for one, am very interested in that. So without me taking up any more time, Eleanor, would you please come forward?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Well, my name's Eleanor Baker, and I work for AAA. And so I've worked for AAA for about 20 years now, and my office is up in North Andover, Mass. But I travel all throughout Massachusetts, and I do a lot of outreach. Can you hear me now? And I do a lot of outreach for AAA, basically getting out into the community. We talk about travel, safety on the roadways, that sort of thing. So we do a lot of highway safety stuff. So I've been doing that for about 20 years. And my headquarters right now is in Providence, Rhode Island, actually. So I'm all over the place, but it's a lot of fun, and I get to meet a lot of people, so that's great. So how many people are AAA members here? Thank you very much. So we can talk a little bit about AAA. I can answer questions for you if you have them, anything AAA related, you know, after we do a little presentation here, if you have anything for me. But one of the other things I'd like to talk about before we talk about the winter driving stuff is also just about, as for seniors, how driving has changed over the last 20 years that I've been at AAA. And so for you guys, do you see a lot of changes happening out in the roadways? A lot of cars, right? A lot of congestion. And so I like to think in terms of, I have two nephews, they're twins. They just turned 17, and they just got their license. And before they ever got their license, they had a car sitting out in the driveway ready for them. So that, you know, so for kids now that they get their license, you know, we might not have gotten cars for the first couple of years. We might have had to share, you know, ask our parents if we could use their car. But now kids get their cars right away, right? Everybody's busy. They get lots of sports, so lots of congestion out there, as you said. And so the roadways are really busy. And we have a real hodgepodge of drivers out there, too, because we have the very novice drivers. And then we have the senior drivers. And the good thing about senior drivers is that we have a lot of experience, right? So in terms of even winter driving, you've had a lot of experience driving on the roadway. So that's a good thing. So seniors are very experienced. And also, seniors aren't big risk takers. So that's a good thing, right? Be very careful and obey the laws and that sort of thing. So, so senior drivers are safe drivers, but there are some hazards as we get older, and even body changes, you know, things that happen to us physically can change driving for us. So has anybody noticed some of those things in terms of how driving for you has changed? Anybody having trouble with nighttime driving? Glare, right? That's an issue for seniors. Nighttime. Right. So a lot of people, how many people have changed their driving patterns over the last 20 years, or maybe 10 years or so, right? Maybe you try to do more things during the day, stay off the roads at nighttime. So glare is a problem because at age 60, we need 3 times as much light to see as what we did when we were 20. So that's a very real thing. So for seniors, you know, changing your driving patterns a little bit might help you. If you have the luxury, if you're retired, you can go out during the day, do your errands while other people are working, right? So a little less congestion. So it takes some just kind of creative thinking, right, to kind of change some driving patterns, and it makes it a little bit safer for yourself. And what I always like to tell people, it's a lot about your comfort level on the roadway. You want to be comfortable. So has anybody gotten less comfortable over the years about driving? Yeah. And congestion will do that, right? And then this winter weather will do that. I know some people that are terrified, so they don't like to drive. The driving just makes them really nervous when you get out there. So some of the other things that have changed over the past few years that has changed driving for us, how about the technology in cars? Right? So there's a lot of very positive things that are happening with our cars right now. Anybody have a backup camera in their car? And so I don't have one in mine, but when I rented a car, it did have it in it. And I found that I really liked it. Do you like yours?
We just got a car.
It's great. So it's just a matter of kind of getting used to it and the comfort zone with that again. But some of the technology that's coming, including the backup camera that's already here, they're going to be really helpful. But it's kind of one of those things, you can't be afraid to kind of use it and get used to it, and it's a comfort level again. But how about one of the major changes that we've had over the last maybe 10, 20 years has been the airbag, right? So the airbag is there, and it's saved a lot of lives. But it also is a piece of technology that needs to be respected, because it comes out of, if it goes off, it comes out at a high velocity. And so for the most part, a lot of people are sitting too close to the wheel, especially some short-statured, maybe ladies that, you want to make sure your feet are squarely on the pedals, because you've got to be able to hit the brake when you need it. But you also want to make sure you're back as far as you can be from that airbag so that the airbag can do its job. And you also want to make sure that you don't rely just on the airbag. You also have to use your seatbelt, right? That's the best technology that we have in that car to keep you safe. So you really want to make sure that, we have this for a graphic, you want to make sure that you're about 10 inches away from the airbag, if at all possible, that you have your seatbelt on as a restraint, right? So that you're sitting where you need to be so the airbag can come out and do its job. You also want to make sure that your feet are squarely on the pedals, that you're not using your tippy toes, right, on the pedal, so that you're not going to, when you need to hit the brake, you're not going to come off of the brake. So those are a couple of things that, technology-wise, that have changed for us over the years. But it's a positive thing, but we do have to respect the technology as well. So does anybody else can think of anything else that's changed over the years for you? Cell phones, right? So we're always talking about distractions. What's that? Texting, yeah. Because that's a real problem. So the cell phones are a great piece of technology. I feel uncomfortable if I'm out there in the world without it now, because I like to be able to call somebody if I have an emergency or something like that. But also the technology is a distraction. And so we don't think of seniors as texting too much, right, in the car. But what other kind of distractions are there for seniors that need to be cognizant of? We found out that through studies that a distraction is a distraction is a distraction. Some are worse than others. Texting is the worst. But the other thing is, you could have somebody in your car, and you could be having a conversation, and if you're carrying on an emotional conversation, that could be a distraction. The radio, believe it or not, can be a distraction. What's that? Kids and grandkids, right? If they're in the back seat of the car and something's happening back there, and you're trying to, find out what's happening back there. So, motorcycles. Yeah, that sometimes they can be a little distracting, because their method of just even stopping and starting, maybe they're weaving in traffic a little bit. So you got to be careful, because if it's kind of like pedestrians. If an automobile and a pedestrian or a motorcycle crash, the outcome is probably not going to be very good. So everybody's got to be very careful about motorcycles, pedestrians. And then also, because of the technology of the cell phones and people texting, when we talk about being defensive in your driving, you've got to be defensive in your driving now more than ever, because other people are very distracted in their cars. So it's really important to be very vigilant, right, and be very, very careful. Did you have a question? No. Okay, so those are some of the things that are going on in the car. So there's a lot going on in the car. People are doing more things than ever. They're not just doing the one task of driving, right? What are some of the other things they're doing? They're going to the fast food place, right, to get something to eat. They're eating in the car. Putting makeup on, grooming, all of those things. Reading, yeah. One time our group was going, we were traveling and working, we were in a big bus, a big regular, 40-person bus, and we got kind of stuck on the highway in traffic. And as all of the people from my work are sitting there looking around, the guy in the car next to them was playing the guitar. So people think that they should be multitasking, but our brains really weren't made to multitask so much as we think they were. So we really need to be diligent, eyes on the road, paying attention, and being really defensive in our driving. Some of the other things that I like to talk about too, particularly to see, yes?
I find too, I was a policeman for 30 years, is that the older generation, including myself, taking more medicines that are affecting your driving. It's prescribed medicine and everything else, but if you see on these files, they'll tell you shouldn't be driving.
Correct.
But,
so
that was a big problem towards the end. I was in Providence for 30 years, and most of the accidents with the elderly was we found that medication was a big factor.
Right.
I mean, it was all legal.
Yes.
Smoking wacky tobacco like the young people.
Right. So just as I said with seniors, we don't necessarily think that they're engaged in risky behaviors, and so there might not be drinking and driving as much, or smoking some pot or something like that driving, but the chances of being impaired due to a medication is very high, because by age 65, most of us are on at least one medication. So that when you then get a cold or something else, and then you are going to go to the local pharmacy and take an over-the-counter medication, you're not quite sure if that might have a bad reaction between the two medications. So seniors really have to be careful around medications. And I was usually at the end of the program, I do tell you about our website, and AAA has a great website for seniors, seniordriving.aaa.com, and I have some handouts right here. But on that is a piece of technology that addresses that, because you can go in there and it doesn't cost you anything and nobody's watching, but you can put in any and all medications that you're taking into the computer, and it will tell you if it could possibly have an effect on your driving. So it's a really nice piece of technology, and I do have those handouts with me. So those are some of the things that affect seniors as we age. One of the other things I do like to point out is that there are specific places that cause an issue with seniors, and can you take a guess while you're driving in traffic what those might be? Some of those are. How about intersections? Intersections can be a real problem for seniors, especially when you're taking a left-hand turn. So if you come to a four-way stop and the traffic across from you does not have a stop sign or a stop light that's preventing them from coming across, and you have to take a left-hand turn across it, you need to be really careful and make sure that you're paying attention, and really make sure that the way is clear before you take that left-hand turn, because that's historically where seniors get into a lot of trouble. And recently you also saw in the news that left-hand turns are trouble for everybody, not just seniors, but especially for seniors, because I think it was FedEx or UPS that they route their drivers so that they're always taking a right-hand turn whenever possible, because intersections are a problem. and left-hand turns are a problem. So for those guys, it prevents a lot of crashes. It's more, time effective and all of that. So it's not just seniors, but you got to remember that it's especially for seniors. Yielding is another issue too. Yielding the right of way. So a lot of times if you come to a stop sign, a four-way stop, maybe an intersection, and if you look in the manual, in the driver's manual, it will tell you that the person that gets there first and they stop, they have the right of way. And in a perfect world, that's a great thing, right? But is that always the case? Is that how the real world operates? No. So basically what we tell people is that the right of way cannot be taken, it has to be given. So if you come up to an intersection and technically you have the right of way, don't take it for granted that you can go and that you're going to be safe. You've got to really make sure that once you're, acknowledging that intersection, maybe you look at the other driver, make sure they're not going to go too. And if you need to yield the right of way, you need to yield the right of way because it's better than getting in a crash. So right-of-way issue. How about roundabouts? Does anybody like roundabouts, or do you like them? Yeah, I kind of like them.
A lot of them in Arizona, not many here.
No, but I think more and more we're seeing them coming, and they're getting smaller and smaller. And I believe it's because the smaller they get, the slower the traffic has to go within them. So they are good because a lot of people find them a little confusing, but once you kind of get your feelers in there and you get out there and you try them a few times, then you find out that, number one, the traffic is going slower. So the good thing is that if there is a crash in a roundabout, the damages are generally fewer, right? Less bodily, less damage to the car, that sort of thing. There are no left-hand turns in a roundabout, so that's a good thing because it takes that right out of the equation. So I know that up by where I live on the North Shore, we had one recently put in, and I think it was so small they had to enlarge it a little bit, but there's just no way you can go quickly. Yes?
I'm not familiar with that roundabout procedure. What is that, a roundabout? Are we talking about
a rotary?
A rotary, yeah. Okay. Rotary I'm familiar with. A roundabout, I never heard that term.
Yeah, I think it's more and more becoming more commonplace, and maybe because the rotaries now, as we used to think of them, are getting smaller. They're more like the European roundabouts. So I think that they're a good thing, so don't be afraid of them. So does anybody else have any questions before we start talking about snow? No?
Yeah, how much snow do we get?
Yeah, I wish I could predict that, but even the professionals have a hard time predicting the snow. But so does anybody have what I'll put on the slide? There we go. Sorry, I need my glasses. So there we go. So this is how it looks when it first falls, right? And it's really beautiful. It's really nice. And then you have to go driving in it, and then it's not so nice, right? So a few of the things that we like to talk about, just to talk about ice and snow, and as I said, you guys have had a lot of experience, so that's a good thing. So you know the feel of it when you get out there, but it doesn't hurt to have a refresher, and anything that you guys have, that you can throw in as advice, feel free. So we'll talk about how our winter driving skills can be improved, something about proper car maintenance. We know some of the things, but maybe we'll learn something new. What emergency supplies should be kept in the car. Everybody might have a few favorites that they like to leave in the car. And also methods for getting out of a dangerous driving situation. So does anybody feel like any of these things? Does anybody feel particularly nervous? Somebody said they don't mind driving in snow. One lady up in Woburn, she actually said she liked it, but that's the only one I know that said she liked driving in snow. So in years past, we used to think about changing the tires for the winter season. But most people now use the all-season tires, right? And so basically one of the things is that if you're going to change your tires, it's an added expense. And also you got to store them over the winter. So if you have the luxury and you want to do that, then you certainly can. But unless you're going skiing or up in ski country, most people are using the all-season tires now, and those are fine. You also want to make sure that you want to make sure that your tires are in good shape. You want to make sure you know that what the inflation needs to be in the tire, right? The proper inflation for the tire. Where are you going to find that? Owner's manual, right? And we'll see a diagram I have here. There is a measurement on the tire, but you really want to go to the owner's manual, or inside of the door jamb, there's a placard there, and that will state it as well. So you want to go by that. That's what the manufacturer suggests for your car. And then we want to make sure the electrical system is in good working order. So basically, I know that it's getting a little bit late now because we're in February, but it's still not too late to make sure that your car, because we do have, we still got some way to go with our winter driving. You want to make sure that your car is in good working order. You want to make sure the electrical system is in good, we'll talk about the battery a little bit. So as I said, right there you can see there's a pounds per square inch on the tire, but we really want to go by the manufacturer warranty, the suggested inflation for your car. You also want to make sure your lights are in good working order, right? One year, I had the bad judgment of what happened in the bad luck. One of my lights went out in the front of the car. And I thought that, well, I'm going to get my oil changed, so I'll ask the guy to do it at that time. So I didn't get it done right away, but within a couple of days, my other light went out as well. So then I had no headlights. Thankfully, I figured this out during the day, and I was able to stop by the dealership and I got them, but it also cost me dearly because it was in an emergency situation. So, so you want to make sure that your headlights are in good working order. If you're not going to get your oil changed anytime soon, or your car inspected, then you want to just take a look around your car, make sure that all your lights are in good working order, and replace anything that needs to get replaced. And then also, it seems simple, but you want to keep the lenses clear, because right now, every time I get near my car, my black coat has salt all over it, right? So that salt can also be in the front of the lamps in the front of your car, and that can cut down your visibility by like 90%. So you really want to do those common sense things. The other thing I like to suggest to people too is make sure that you clean the inside of your windshield, because what I believe they're finding now is that a lot of the materials inside the car, even if you're not smoking or anything like anybody smoking in your car, there's some gases that are emitted by the materials in the car, and they're kind of building up on the windshields at the inside. So you want to make sure those are clean, because that can really cut down on your visibility, but also it can add some glare. So if you're already having trouble with glare, you want to make sure that the inside of your windshields are really, really nice and clean. So it doesn't hurt to do that every month or two. And then the brake system, of course. With the brakes, you don't want to delay. If you think whatsoever you might be having an issue with your brakes, you hear any kind of weird squeaks or anything, you want to make sure that you have them checked out. You want to make sure that the maintenance is done, because when you need those brakes to work, you're going to want them to work. And the exhaust system. We all know about the hazards of carbon monoxide poisoning. You want to make sure that there's in no way, shape, or form your exhaust system is having any leaks or rusting or anything like that. And in one of these kind of presentations I did, a lady afterward told me that she really loved her car, but it was getting a little bit older and her exhaust system was rusting out, so she had to get rid of it because of that, because she was afraid of the carbon monoxide danger. So you just want to be careful about that. If you are maneuvering your car around and you happen to back up into some snow, you want to make sure that you don't have a plug of snow in the tailpipe or anything, because you don't want to run the risk of carbon monoxide backing up into the cabin of the car or anything like that. And then your heating and cooling system. As your car, if your car is a couple of years old, you want to make sure that the defrosters are working really well. You don't get any ice buildup on the outside of the hood or anything, so that you're preventing good circulation within the car. So just make sure you're taking care of all those things. And then, of course, the windshield and the wipers and the wiper fluid. I like to keep an extra gallon of wiper fluid because right now I'm about out. And with all the salt and everything on the road, if this melts a little bit, I'll be needing it really badly in the next few days, right? So you want to make sure that your wipers are working really well, and we'll talk about those in a second too. But also that the fluid, the things that squirt onto your windshield, that they're working well and they're aimed correctly. I've seen some. Have you driven down the highway and you see some of the fluid goes over the car, and you want to make sure that it's on your windshield. And also, there are such things as winter blades. So sometimes if you don't have the luxury of parking in a garage and you have a lot of ice that builds up on your windshields, you might want to think about, next time you have to replace them, get some winter blades because they're a little heavier duty. Some people swear by them, really like them. And have you seen this before? Have you seen people driving like this? Yeah. Yes, and even though they know it's illegal, they're not supposed to be doing it, a lot of people kind of brush the car off a little bit and then get in and go. So
I've seen people with pickup trucks will throw additional snow into the back of the pickup for weight.
Oh, okay. But then sometimes there's a blow around too and blow out.
Blow right off into the car that's behind them.
Yeah, and this happened to me recently in Portsmouth too, and a gentleman, and it looked pretty much almost half as much as this maybe, but he pulled right out in front of me, and there he was with all that snow, and I thought people knew better, but but apparently not always. And that's what a winter wiper blade might look like. It's heavier duty than the regular. And now, as we think about, how the gasoline, thankfully gasoline, the prices had come down, right? They went up a little bit in the last few days, but that's to be expected. But in the winter time, they reformulate the gas. And the gas reformulation means that when you go out in the morning and it's really cold, it's a little easier to start the car. But it also means that it doesn't burn quite as efficiently. So in the wintertime, if you think your car is burning a little bit more gas, it probably is. But when the spring comes back around, they'll kind of stop sending that reformulated gas out, and it goes back to the regular stuff, and your gas mileage will probably go back to normal. So you don't need to use, in the interim, you don't need to use premium gas or something like that. It's not going to really affect your gas mileage unless your manufacturer tells you that you need to do that. So now, as the driver of the car, most of the time we run out of the house. We think the car is going to operate well and all that stuff. So we kind of dress as we normally would. But just in case, I have been out and it started snowing and it got a little bit more snow than I thought it might, or the car might get stuck or something like that. So you might want to think about having some extra things in the car, and also to make sure that you're dressed appropriately, right, in case you get stuck while you're out. So anybody have any kind of things that they like to think about in terms of what they like to take with them? An extra blanket, maybe? Mittens, right? And so the thing, though, about mittens is that you don't necessarily want to be driving with them, though. You might want to have them in the car so that you have some extra warmth, but gloves are better because they can actually grip the steering wheel a little bit better. So here's a few things that we like to talk about putting in the car. One of the other things on that other slide, you saw that it was talking about securing the floor mats. In the summertime, I vacuum the car out a lot. I live by the beach, so I get a lot of sand in the car, so I'm always vacuuming the car out. So I tend not to tighten down those the floor mats so much because sometimes they're a pain in the neck to get out. But you really want to make sure that they're secure, because what happens is that if you're out there and you got your snow boots on and stuff and you're trying to get to the gas and the brake, you want to make sure that your way is clear and you don't have the floor mat kind of hindering you from getting to the brake or the gas. So make sure that your floor mats are secure. And then the other thing is that you want to make sure everybody have a cell phone. Does everybody have one now?
No.
If you do have one, you want to make sure that you have a charger for the car, because that's really critical. Because I've been guilty of it. I've forgotten to charge my phone up, and you get out there, and if you need to make a call, you want to make sure your cell phone's charged up, and if it's not, you want to make sure that you have a charger in the car. Somebody else said had blankets, right? Maybe the polar fleeces aren't too big. They're not too heavy. You can leave one stashed in the back just in case you might need it. You want to have it because in case your gloves get wet, or you have some mittens. Maybe some of those things you can stick in there, the thermal things you can, the hand warmers. That's a really nice thing to have. The flares, I don't see too many flares so much unless the professional truck drivers maybe, but you might want to think about having some rectangles, the reflective ones, so that if you did have to stop on the side of the road, people will see you. You want to do anything if you get stuck on the side of the road to bring attention to yourself so people know you're there so that they don't, crash into you. And then how about kitty litter or some sand or something like that? One great tip that a woman in one of these kind of presentations gave is that, the things that you do the sprinkled cheese with your spaghetti, well, when those are empty, you can clean them out, put some sand or some kitty litter in there, and then keep it in your car. And if you come back home or you go somewhere and it's icy out or black ice or something and you don't realize it, you have your own kind of portable sprinkler for, to put some sand down and get some traction. So I thought that was a really good idea. Does anybody have any tricks that they like to do while they're, no? Some people like those, you can also, if you did get stuck, you can take your floor mats, put them under the tires, give you a little bit of extra traction. You've done that? Yeah.
It's on ice, and just whip right up.
And they're gone.
They're gone.
All right, so you might want to think about a little small shovel back there. Make sure that it seems like during the spring I don't like to think about the ice and the snow, so I sort of lose track of my scrapers and that sort of thing. But you want to make sure they're in the back of the car and that they are there and you haven't moved them. And sometimes when I go out there, I have a particular brush I like. But when I'm going back and forth, I might bring it in the house, I might forget all about it. So you want to make sure that there's one back there so that when you're out, if some snow event happens, you have it with you. Snacks and water, not everybody needs these in there, but especially if you have a medical condition, if you have diabetes or something like that. My brother does, and if he goes out once in a while and his medication's a little off, he needs something to eat and he needs it then. So you want to make sure if you or somebody that you travel with a lot has some condition like that, that you have something in the car, some crackers, something like that.
You have those bottles of water and leave it in the truck.
Might freeze, yeah.
It's going to freeze.
Yeah.
Especially on cold nights like last night.
Yeah.
You might have to bring it with you on a daily basis.
Yeah, especially if it's like it's been lately.
Yeah.
Some jumper cables. Now, AAA, I like to remind people too that if you have AAA, of course, we'll come out to jump the car if you're driving. But if you're with somebody and they get stuck and they don't have AAA, but you do, you can still call AAA, because AAA doesn't follow your car, it follows the member. So if you're with somebody, even if you're in another state, whatever, if you have a membership and you're with somebody that does not, or you're in a rental car or whatever, with somebody that doesn't have the coverage, then call us and we'll come get you. So you might want to have, as I said, extra washer fluid, that sort of thing, so that you will not run out. And maybe a first aid kit. And even because in a snow emergency, you might find yourself needing to help somebody else, not just yourself. So just a little preparedness like that. So does anybody have any other little things that they like to think about for winter driving?
No snow.
No snow, and stay home. And I thought that we might have skated a little bit because the first part of this winter wasn't too bad, but we really got a lot of snow dumped on us in the last week or so. One of the other tips that I'd like to give you about AAA is that if you are, like this weekend, supposed to snow a lot. So what do you think happens? People stay in, right? And they kind of hunker down for the weekend, and they don't want to go out, so they don't start their car either. And what happens on Monday morning? Everybody's got a dead battery. The people that are going to work do, and if you're retired and you're going to go to a doctor's appointment at 10 o'clock and you go out there at 9 o'clock, it's really kind of not a good time because everybody else in the world is trying to get their car started too. So be careful about Monday mornings. So go out in the weekend and start your car up and make sure that you kind of get the battery, give it a little time to run and that sort of thing, and make sure it will go for you on Monday morning when you need it. So let me see. I think that's... That's it for the winter driving stuff that we like to keep in our car, but talking about how to reduce your risk of a crash. So as I said before, you've got a lot of experience about driving in the snow, but a lot of other people don't, so you have to be diligent about being defensive about your driving, right? And when generally, no matter what I'm talking about in terms of driving, it's all about people's speed, right, and their position on the road. And so for those people that don't feel the need to slow down in the winter weather driving conditions, that's very scary. So if you're on the road with them, that's why you need to be really careful. When it comes to terms about curves, intersections, and that sort of thing, you want to be at a speed that's slow enough so that you can handle whatever comes up, right? And so in terms of an intersection, we like to remind people to try to do one thing at a time. So if you're braking, try to, to do as much of the braking at one time as you can before you're turning the wheel. Because if you're coming up to an intersection and you're braking, and you're already turning the wheel in anticipation of taking that turn, and you hit some ice, and your wheels are turning, so what's going to happen? Or somebody hits you from behind, you're going to go into the oncoming traffic, right? So if you can kind of like slow down, come to a stop, and then start the turn, especially in icy weather, it's a lot safer. So try to do one thing at a time. The bridges and overpasses and underpass, we know that those freeze up first, right? Because if you're going over a bridge, there's nothing underneath, there's no earth underneath to insulate it, so that's going to freeze up first, so be careful about that. Be cautious of black ice, because you can't even see it, right? So in the morning, if you hear that there's black ice out in the roadway, you might want to, if you don't have to go out right then, you might want to wait a while so that it gives the sun time to kind of warm up things and get some of the ice melted. And also, don't use cruise control when it's icy and bad weather conditions, or if there's a lot of snow on the road, because that takes more control away from you. What's that? Okay, now we're going to talk a little bit about brakes. So in years past, do you remember the thing about pumping the brakes, right? If you get into a skid, mostly everybody now, we all have ABS brakes, the anti-lock braking system. So you don't need to do that pumping of the brakes thing anymore unless you think you're losing your brakes. If you put your foot on the brake and nothing is happening, then you can pump and you can try to get some pressure back. But other than that, in a skidding situation or whatever, you don't need to pump the brakes anymore. And that's because we have the anti-lock braking system. So it's a little bit easier now because you don't have to do that thing where, remember years past they told you, well, steer in the direction of the skid and do that, and you don't have to think about that anymore, because the recommendation now is if you feel a skid happening, what you want to do, because the anti-lock braking system, it doesn't lock your wheel up anymore. like it used to. So basically what you do is you keep your head turned in the direction that you want to go in the first place, not in the skid. You keep your eyes focused and your head focused in the direction you want to go, and that will naturally keep your hands in the wheel continuing on in the direction you want to go. Don't have to think about that skidding and turning in the other direction anymore. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. And it's a lot easier to remember because the other thing kind of got confusing and it seemed counterintuitive, but I think it had a lot to do with not having the anti-lock brakes. And then, of course, avoid slamming on the brakes if you can. Sometimes you got to do what you got to do, and you need to slam on the brakes if a deer runs out in front of you, that sort of thing. And your reaction is to slam on the brakes, and sometimes you got to do that. But avoid it if possible. And that, again, is a lot about speed, because if you're going slow enough, you don't really need to slam on the brakes. And I think that's the scary thing about a lot of people driving too fast in the winter weather, is if they have to stop, their control is not going to be there if they're going too fast. And then, of course, during the skid, with the anti-lock braking systems, the last point is wait for the wheels to grip the road, and the vehicle will start to steer, and you can feel it. I mean, we all have that experience where you're skidding a little bit, and as you're going slow enough, you can just kind of wait for the control to come back if you steer in the right this direction you want to go and continue on, and you don't panic. And so I think about my two nephews that just got their licenses. So I'm thinking about those guys. Now, that's the nice thing about us having a lot more experience than they have, right? And especially with all of these mounds and mounds of snow, and you're trying to navigate your way around them and inch out into the roadway and hope that somebody doesn't come by and clip you. So experience is a good thing. So now, when we started talking in the beginning about the seatbelts and all of that, and in Massachusetts, where do you think our seatbelt is as a state in terms of the United States? Are we at the top? Are we in the middle? At the bottom in usage? Do you think that Massachusetts?
I think we're at the top, but I'm not sure.
We're almost at the bottom. We're somewhere in the bottom, yeah. So seatbelt usage is not terrific in Massachusetts. So in Rhode Island is actually higher than us, and they went up a little bit in the last couple of years. So so we have a lot of work to do there. That's why AAA is always out talking about seatbelt usage and seatbelt promotion. But the seatbelt is the #1 line of defense that we have, and we really need to use it. The other thing about is this thing back here. What do we usually call this? Headrest. The headrest, right? But it's not a headrest. It's a head restraint, because if you are in a crash, what happens is you're going to go forward, but then you're coming back. And when you come back, that head restraint has to be in the right position, so you want it to do its job and to keep you from getting whiplash, right? So where should that be positioned? It's right in the back of your head, the fattest part of it, however the model yours is designed. The fattest part, the middle of it, should be right here above your ear in the back of your head. So make sure that that's approximately where it's hitting, right about there. And so that it can do its job, it will keep you from getting whiplash. Where should your hands be on the wheel? No. Nope. So it's actually, when we went to school, or we learned to drive, we were told 10 and 2, right? So now we're told the best place for them to be is really 9 and 3, or down here even at 8 and 4. But you don't want to be up here anymore, and why is that? Yeah, but because of the airbag, right? Because if the airbag deploys and it comes out, your arms could come back here and hit you right in the face. So you want to make sure that they're down here on the side of the wheel, or even down here, so that, and actually if you're here, you kind of get better leverage anyway. And especially if you're talking about winter driving and skidding, then it prevents you from oversteering. So basically that's where they should be now. So those are some of the pieces about, the technology has changed our lives and in terms of driving, and that's one of the other pieces. So basically, we all know about don't start up a car in a closed garage, right? Because of the carbon monoxide. So we all know about that. If possible, don't use your parking brake in the winter too, because it could freeze up overnight, and you don't want that because then you're going nowhere until it warms up again. Also, keep your gas tank half full. And then somebody said, does it have to be exactly half full? No, it just at least half full, right? And that will prevent the gas lines from freezing up. I also asked the guy in my office, it's the car doctor, John Paul, did anybody read his column in the publication? So I asked him, do we need to use, somebody asked, do we need to use that antifreeze stuff in the gas anymore? And he said, no, don't have to worry about that. So that's a good thing. And then also, as I said before, compensate for winter driving by being very defensive in your own driving. And that's my contact info. I also have some cards here too if you want my phone number, because if there is something that came up, anything that you need to know that we didn't cover, you can always call me and ask. But I will go over some of the materials that I brought here today too, just so that you can have some handouts. And this is a copy of the seniordriving.aaa.com, and if you'd like to go on the website, this is a really great resource, and it's all free. You don't have to be a member. You can go on there, and they have all things associated with seniors and driving. And right here, RoadWise RX, that is that program that I talked about that you can go in there and you can plug in any medications that you're taking, prescription or non-prescription, see how they'll interact with each other, see if they'll have any effect on your driving. And it's really great because, as I said, if you really have to be an advocate for yourself, because if you're seeing multiple doctors, somebody could overlook, somewhere a medication that you're taking. So if you go to another doctor next week and you find out, oh, I got to take a different medication, you want to kind of check up on it and make sure that you're not going to have any repercussions on your driving. Right here also is find your perfect fit. All of those things that I talked about was how you fit into your car, and it changes for us as the technology changes and as we age. There's a whole section here. There's a lot of videos about a program that AAA helped develop called RoadWise RX, and also you can go in there. It will tell you where your seatbelt should be positioned, right, on your body, how you should fit into your car. One of the most important things is that some of us, as we age too, it's okay to have a cushion under your seat, on your seat, so that you're positioned up a little bit. Because we've all seen a little old lady looking through the steering wheel and not over the steering wheel. So you want to make sure you're not in that position, because that's not really very safe, is it? So it's okay to have a cushion. And medical supply places will sell them. They sell them for wheelchairs, for regular chairs, and you can get them. They're really nice, and you can, they even have swivel. So if you have a hip operation or some kind of, if you're, having problems getting in and out of the car, you can swivel on the seat cushion, and it will help you so that you're facing out of the door. And then the other thing I like to mention to people, if you're having trouble, my mother broke her hip, so getting in and out of a car was a problem for her. So there are little devices like this. You hold it in your hand, and as this gentleman here is doing in the photo, you put it into the door jamb. And then you can use it to lift yourself out to help give you leverage. And it's a really nice handy too. Then you take it out and you put it in the car and use it when you need it. So they do have devices like that are very helpful. Especially a woman at my work recently broke her leg. So there's a whole host of issues that arise anytime like that you're having any kind of issues with mobility. So don't be afraid to ask. And another great resource is that if you ever did have to go to a rehab hospital for anything, you can always ask in there, because they have trained occupational therapists that are trained in CarFit. So that's CarFit. They also have a lot of other info on there. So you can take one of these, and if you like to go online, or use it here at the Senior Center and have somebody, if you're not used to going online, have somebody help you out with that. I also brought with me the Older, Wiser Driver, so there are some great tips in there for seniors. How to go on ice and snow, kind of, talks about all those things we talked about today, and highlights those again, and Get a Grip, and that talks in particular about wet weather. So, okay. So you're welcome to take any of those things, and I also have a card on the table if you'd like to get a hold of me. There's a little bag here, too, to put all your goodies in, so you can take those. So if you'd like to come up and take some of the stuff.